Here is part 1 explained in approximately 1,000 words. Fast-paced, emotional, simple English. Clean and YouTube safe. Only story. No analysis. No repetition. Part 1. The unexpected ride 1,000-word expanded version. Snow fell softly over Portland, turning the late-night streets into empty white roads. Ethan, a rideshare driver, usually stopped working before midnight, but something made him stay out a little longer. Maybe it was the silence, maybe it was the way the world looked peaceful for the first time in days. His car heater hummed quietly, and the radio played soft music, giving him company. Just when he thought about turning off the app and going home, a request popped up. A pickup from a cafe that should have been closed hours ago. He accepted out of habit. When he pulled up, he saw a young woman standing alone in the snow, hugging her arms like she was trying to hold herself together. Her name was Madison. She hurried into the back seat, brushing snow from her coat. Her eyes were red, and it looked like she had been crying for a long time. She didn't give him an address at first. She just whispered, "Can you drive? Anywhere? I just don't want to go home yet." Ethan glanced at her through the mirror. She wasn't drunk. She wasn't lost. She was broken. The kind of broken that didn't make noise, so he drove. City lights passed by the windows, turning into blurry colors as the snowfall thickened. Madison stared outside like she was searching for something far away. She didn't speak for several minutes. Ethan thought silence might be what she needed, but then her voice cracked softly. "Do you know what it feels like to lose someone who is still standing right in front of you?" Ethan wasn't sure if she wanted an answer, so he just listened. Madison pulled off a small ring from her finger. Her engagement ring. She spun it in her hand with trembling fingers. "I left it on the table before I walked out," she said. "He didn't even try to stop me." The story unfolded piece by piece. She had found messages on her fiancé's phone messages with someone else. Not friendly, not harmless. The kind of messages that break trust without needing explanation. She had confronted him, expecting denial, maybe guilt, maybe even apology. Instead, he was calm. Too calm. He blamed work stress, loneliness, excuses that sounded rehearsed. She realized he wasn't sorry. He was sorry she found out. Ethan kept driving, turning down quiet streets where houses looked warm and safe, nothing like how Madison felt. Her voice was soft but full of pain, like she was trying not to fall apart again. She pressed her forehead to the cold window and sighed. "I spent 3 years planning a future with a man who was planning a future with someone else." Ethan finally spoke. "Sometimes people don't notice what they have until it's gone." She let out a broken laugh. "He won't notice. That's the worst part." The car filled with quiet again. Ethan didn't know her, but he felt a strange responsibility, like he had been placed in that seat for a reason. He didn't want to turn around and take her home. Not while she was shaking. Not while her heart was still bleeding. He drove toward a small hill on the edge of the city, place where the night skyline looked peaceful. When they reached the overlook, he parked the car. Madison didn't ask why. She just looked out through the windshield as snow covered the rooftops below. Ethan handed her a tissue from his console. She took it gently, avoiding his eyes, embarrassed by her tears. "I don't even recognize myself," she whispered. "I used to be strong." "You still are," Ethan said, keeping his voice steady. "You left instead of pretending nothing happened. That takes strength." It was not a grand speech, just simple words. But they mattered. Madison leaned back against the seat, breathing slowly as if trying to gather the pieces of herself. The heater warmed the air, and for a moment, she looked less broken. "Tonight was supposed to be the night we chose wedding dates," she said. "I thought we'd be celebrating." Ethan didn't know what to say. Sometimes silence is kinder than answers. She wiped her face again, this time with calmer hands. "Thank you for driving. You could have just taken me home if I didn't think you wanted to be there," Ethan replied. She gave a tired, grateful smile. "You read that, right?" As they sat in the warm car watching the snowy city lights, Madison felt safe enough to talk about things she hadn't told anyone. How she moved to Portland for love. How she gave up a job in another state. How she trusted the wrong person and didn't see it until tonight. It's strange, she said, how someone can be so close to you and still make you feel completely alone. Ethan understood more than she knew. A few years ago, he had been engaged too. It ended quietly, without betrayal, but the loneliness afterward felt sharp. He didn't tell her that yet. It wasn't his moment. It was hers. Madison looked around the car for the first time, photos clipped to the visor. A small air freshener. A blanket neatly folded in the back. A simple, ordinary car that suddenly felt like the safest place she had been in months. "You're very calm," she said. "Most drivers would think this is strange." "Everyone hurts," Ethan answered. "Some people just don't talk about it." Another long silence, but this one didn't feel heavy. It felt like breathing after holding in tears too long. Snow tapped lightly against the windows. Madison closed her eyes for a moment, resting her head against the seat. For the first time that night, her face didn't look full of pain. It looked peaceful, almost relieved, when she opened her eyes. She turned toward him and whispered, "Thank you for letting me just exist for a little while." Ethan nodded. He didn't expect anything more. He didn't ask questions. He didn't push her to talk. Just being there was enough. But neither of them knew the night wasn't over. Madison looked at the ring still in her hand. Then, without hesitation, she opened the window slightly and dropped it into the snow. The ring disappeared instantly, swallowed by white. "That's how easy it should be to let someone go," she said, but her voice shook. It wasn't easy. Not at all. Ethan watched her quietly. He wanted to say something comforting, but before he could speak, her phone buzzed loudly in the quiet car. She looked at the screen and the color drained from her face. Her fiancé was calling. She froze, holding the phone like it burned her hand. Outside, the city lights glowed softly. Inside, the air shifted again, heavy, tense, uncertain. Ethan didn't move. He didn't say a word. Madison stared at the phone as it rang over and over, and her heartbeat felt louder than the sound. She didn't know whether to answer or let everything end right there, and that was the moment the night truly changed. Here is part 2, the backseat conversation, around 1,000 words, written in a fast-paced, emotional, romantic, and clean style, safe for YouTube. MONETIZATION. Part 2. The backseat conversation. 1,000 words. The phone kept ringing in Madison's hand, its glow flickering against her face like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. For a few seconds, she just stared at it. Then she pressed the button, turned it off completely, and let it fall onto the seat beside her. The sound of snow against the windshield filled the silence that followed. Ethan didn't ask questions. He just adjusted the heater and leaned back slightly, giving her space. The car was still parked at the overlook, the city below glowing softly under layers of snow. Inside, it felt like time had stopped. Madison exhaled, a shaky breath escaping her chest. "I can't talk to him right now," she said quietly. "If I do, I'll go back. And I know I shouldn't." Ethan nodded. "Then don't." His tone wasn't commanding. It was almost peaceful. The kind of voice that didn't try to fix her, only offered her stillness. Madison nodded slowly, almost like she was convincing herself to listen. She wrapped his spare blanket around her shoulders. It smelled faintly of pine, and it made her feel warm in a way she hadn't felt in months. Without saying anything more, she moved from the front seat to the back. She curled her legs under the blanket and leaned her head against the window. Ethan stayed in the front seat, facing forward. He could see her reflection in the rearview mirror, soft, tired, fragile. She wasn't the same woman who had stepped into his car an hour ago. Something in her eyes had shifted. They still carried pain, but also a quiet defiance. Outside, the storm thickened. The world looked peaceful, almost unreal. Inside the car, their breath fogged the glass, and the faint sound of the heater filled the silence. After a few minutes, Madison spoke again. "It's strange," she said softly. "You'd think after being betrayed, I'd feel angry. But I just feel empty, like all my emotions ran out." Ethan understood that feeling too well. Sometimes emptiness comes after the hardest part, he said. It's your heart's way of resting. She gave a tired laugh. You sound like you've been there. He hesitated, then nodded. A few years ago, someone I loved left. No goodbye, no explanation. Just gone. Madison looked up. Did it ever stop hurting? Not completely, he said honestly. But it changed. The pain turns into something quieter, something you can live with. Her eyes softened. That's comforting in a strange way. The conversation drifted naturally. They spoke about heartbreak, about love that fades slowly like old photographs. She told him about how her fiancé used to bring her coffee every morning and how that stopped months ago. How she blamed herself for not being enough, for not keeping him interested. Ethan listened carefully. He didn't interrupt. When he finally spoke, it was gentle. You didn't lose him because you weren't enough. You lost him because he stopped choosing you. That's not your fault. Those words hit her deeply. She looked away, blinking fast, trying to keep her tears from falling again. Why do kind words hurt more than harsh ones? She whispered. Because they're true, Ethan said quietly. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The city lights reflected in the glass, glowing softly behind her. Madison looked out the window and whispered, You ever feel like life throws strangers together for a reason? Ethan smiled faintly. Yeah, maybe to remind us that not every stranger hurts us. Her lips curved into a small smile, the first real one of the night. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and leaned her head back. You're a strange kind of driver, she said playfully. You don't talk much, but when you do, you say things that sound like they belong in books. Ethan chuckled under his breath. That's just experience talking. Life teaches us more than books ever could. The heater hummed softly. The snow outside muffled every sound. The world felt smaller, safer inside that car. Madison stretched her legs a little, glancing at him through the gap between the seats. You know, she said, I don't think I've ever been this honest with anyone. Isn't that strange? I've known you for what, an hour? Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who doesn't know your past, Ethan said. They see who you are right now, not who you used to be. Her gaze met his in the mirror. For a moment, it felt like time slowed again. There was no music, no conversation, just the quiet connection of two people who understood pain too well. Madison broke the silence first. You must see a lot of people in your job. Some good stories, some bad. Mostly quiet ones, Ethan said. People think driving is about directions. It's really about silence. About knowing when to speak and when to just listen. She nodded, thoughtful. You're good at listening. He smiled. You're good at talking once you start. She laughed softly, the sound light and real. The kind of laugh that comes when a person forgets for just a second that they're hurting. The snow outside glowed silver under the streetlights. Madison shifted slightly, sitting up straighter. I was supposed to get married in 2 months, she said suddenly. My mom already bought her dress. I told her she'd finally see me walk down an aisle. Now I don't even know how to tell her it's over. Ethan turned halfway toward her. Tell her you chose yourself, he said. She'll understand. Madison looked down at her hands, thinking about that. Choose myself, she repeated softly, like testing the weight of the words. It sounds simple, but it's the hardest thing I've ever done. It's always hard the first time, Ethan said. She smiled faintly again. You really should write a book, he grinned. And call it what? Backseat therapy. That made her freely laugh. The sound filled the car like warmth. For a moment, it didn't matter that her heart was broken, or that the world outside was cold. For a moment, she felt human again. When her laughter faded, a quiet peace settled between them. She rested her head against the seat, closing her eyes. Ethan adjusted the heater so the air stayed warm. After a while, she spoke softly, her voice almost sleepy. Thank you for staying. You could have dropped me off hours ago. Ethan shook his head. Some rides aren't meant to end too soon. She smiled faintly, eyes still closed. You're right. Then her phone buzzed again. The vibration was soft, this time no call, just a message. The screen lit up with her ex's name. She stared at it, the glow reflecting in her tired eyes. Then, without hesitation, she deleted the message. When she looked up, Ethan was still watching through the mirror. She met his gaze and said quietly, "I think I'm done looking back." Ethan nodded once, saying nothing. The snow outside kept falling. The city below shimmered faintly, like a world waiting for both of them to return to it. Inside that quiet car, something unspoken had shifted something new. Something honest. Two strangers sat in the same space, both carrying scars, both finding a little peace in the middle of the storm, and neither of them realized. The night wasn't finished teaching them what healing looked like. Here is part 3, The Choice She Didn't Expect, about 1,000 words. Written, fast-paced, emotional, clean. Simple English and fully YouTube safe. Only story, no extra commentary. Part 3. The choice she didn't expect. The storm outside slowed. The snowflakes fell gently like the city was catching its breath. Inside the car, Madison sat quietly in the back seat, holding the warm blanket and staring out at the snowy lights. Something inside her felt different. Now still hurt, still tender but steadier, like she had finally stopped falling. Her phone was silent after she deleted the message. No more calls. No more excuses. She leaned forward slightly, resting her arms on the back of Ethan's seat. "I should call my friend," she said softly. "I can't go back to the apartment. Not tonight." "I can take you anywhere you need," Ethan replied. "Just tell me where." She hesitated. The city was full of places she used to feel safe in, but tonight everything felt different. It was strange that the only safe place she could think of was a stranger's car, but that was the truth. She gave him her friend's address. It was across town, a quiet neighborhood with old trees covered in snow. Ethan started the engine, and the car rolled slowly down the hill. Madison watched the city lights disappear behind them, almost like she was leaving her old life in the distance. The drive was calm. No loud music, no heavy talking. Just peaceful silence between two people who didn't need to fill space with words. Madison looked at the passing houses, the glowing windows, the holiday lights hanging from roofs. Families inside, probably laughing, sleeping, living. She wondered if anyone knew that a heart was breaking only a few streets away. Halfway through the drive, her voice broke the silence. "It's strange," she said. "I always thought love meant staying no matter what. But maybe love also means knowing when to let go." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes letting go is the only way to respect yourself." Madison looked down at her hands. "My mom always told me that love should feel safe. I ignored that. I thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes. I thought pain was part of the price." "Pain happens," Ethan said, "but it shouldn't be the cost." She breathed out slowly, like a small weight had lifted. "Maybe tonight saved me from years of pretending." The car turned down a quiet neighborhood road. The houses were dark and peaceful. Madison gave directions to a small yellow house with a porch light still on. Her friend's place. Ethan parked in front. The engine hummed softly, the warm air filling the inside of the car. Madison didn't open the door right away. She sat still, looking at her reflection in the window, messy hair, tired eyes, but a strength she didn't recognize before. "Do you think healing is possible for someone like me?" she asked quietly. Ethan looked back at her through the mirror. "Healing isn't a miracle. It's a choice. You already started tonight." Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears didn't fall from sadness. They fell from relief. She wiped her cheeks and took a deep breath. "Thank you, Ethan. You didn't have to stay. You didn't have to care. But you did." He shook his head. "You don't leave someone alone when they're hurting. Not if you can help it." She smiled, soft, tired, but real. Then she opened the door, letting the cold air rush in. She stepped out onto the snowy sidewalk, pulling the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She walked toward the porch, then stopped halfway and turned back. Ethan lowered the window. Snowflakes blew inside, landing on the dashboard. "If life ever pushes you in my path again," she said quietly, "I won't run from it." Maybe we weren't strangers tonight. Not really. Her voice held something new hope, maybe even courage. Ethan gave a small nod. You take care of yourself, Madison. She walked to the door. The porch light glowed warm on her face. Before she knocked, she looked back one last time. Ethan waited until she was safely inside before pulling away. As he drove down the street, his phone buzzed. He didn't expect messages this late. At the next stop sign, he checked it. Unknown number. Thank you for tonight. Maybe we can finish that conversation someday. Ethan smiled without even realizing it. He saved the number before the light turned green. He didn't know what would happen next. Maybe nothing. Maybe something. But the night felt different. Like it had changed both of them in quiet ways. He thought about the ring she dropped into the snow. People think heartbreak is loud, but sometimes it's silent. Sometimes it's just a woman in a backseat, choosing herself for the first time. Sometimes it's a driver who wasn't supposed to be working that night, but stayed anyway. As he headed toward the main road, the snow stopped completely. The sky cleared just enough for stars to shine through the clouds. Winter nights were usually cold and empty. But tonight felt warm in a strange way. Far behind him, Madison knocked on her friend's door. When it opened, her friend hugged her tight. No questions, no judgment, just comfort. Madison finally let out a deep breath she'd been holding for months. Inside, she placed her phone on the table and turned it off. Not because she was scared, but because she didn't need answers from the past anymore. She lay down on the couch, wrapped in the same blanket from the car, and closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, sleep came without fear. Across the city, Ethan parked in his driveway. He sat in silence, replaying the night in his mind. He didn't know why a stranger's heartbreak had touched him so deeply. Maybe because he had once been on the other side, sitting alone in his car, wishing someone cared enough to stay. He stepped outside, looked up at the clearing sky, and felt grateful he hadn't gone home earlier. Sometimes life changes in tiny choices of 5-minute decision. A turn of the wheel, a conversation in a quiet backseat. A lot had happened that night. No drama, no shouting. Just honesty. Just two hearts, tired of hurting, finding peace in each other's presence. And even if they never met again, the night would stay with them proof that kindness still matters. And that sometimes the smallest moments heal the deepest wounds. But deep down, Ethan had a feeling the story wasn't over. Not yet. Because when someone says, maybe we can finish that conversation someday, they usually mean they hope destiny isn't finished with them. And destiny had a strange way of working